Hello, and thank you for tuning in to Behind Marketing Lines, where stories fuel growth. I'm your host, Zeeshan, and today I have a very special guest all the way from Kuwait, Abdulla Al-Awadi. Abdullah, good to see you behind Marketing Lines.
Thanks for having me. Very happy to be here.
I'll jump straight to the questions because we have so many to ask you, from personal life to professional, and I think we're going to deep dive into seeing you as a superhero in a movie as well. So, if I may ask, if your life was a movie, what's the opening scene like and what is it called?
Creating and delivering value.
Interesting.
A very messy one.
Okay.
Then mobilizing to clean it up.
Right.
And then determining where we're heading. Drawing out a path to follow. Gearing up to walk that path. And then celebrating at the end.
Wow. I love it.
Yeah.
And what if it was a book? What chapter are we at right now?
The book is never ending. There's always be a sequel. That's for sure.
Right.
What chapter are we in right now? If it was... I like the number 7.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not too far into the story. It's not too early. Yeah. I think there's still a lot. I still have a lot in my mind.
Right.
Given the AI capabilities that we nowadays have, the horizon and the potential is just tremendous. So there is a lot yet to be done.
What's your origin story? How did you get into strategy and then building something of your own? And I know we have a lot to cover in so little time because we have had earlier conversations and you're doing some amazing stuff. So how did you get into it?
Yeah, I started my career as a banker. I studied finance back in college.
Okay.
Then I joined MBK, National Bank of Kuwait.
Right.
That's the biggest bank in Kuwait, then
Okay.
and now. And for a very short while, 3 years into it, I shifted my career into private equity and real estate.
Okay.
I did that for 15 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm not a banker. I'm actually I am a private equity guy.
Right.
I also have a very big entrepreneurial side to me. I'm not a startup junkie for sure.
Okay.
Yeah. But I've had my share of seeing mid and late stage companies. I used to call them PEATs, private equity acquisition targets.
Okay.
Right. And I used to have this formula with my team, how we can possibly turn SMEs into PEATs.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it was a gap in the market for some time where there was a lot of money going into early stage, but and then there was also a lot of money going into pre-IPOs and IPOs. But then in between, there wasn't much action going on, focusing on turning SMEs into private equity acquisition targets, PEATs.
Interesting.
And so I wanted to focus on that domain, turning SMEs into PEATs.
Okay.
There's a name for that for such companies. These are not, post IPO you become maybe a unicorn. When you start, you're a startup. But in between, there's a very nice term called a gazelle. Very few people, which is a company that has a scale-up potential.
Interesting.
I didn't come up with that. Verne Harnish, the godfather of scaling up, came up with that.
Okay.
So, yeah.
That's an interesting term, and I didn't know about it.
Yeah.
When I look at your LinkedIn, you have accomplished a lot. Was there a plot twist in between, or was the journey very smooth?
I had taken my son and my wife, and we were in the US. He was being treated, medical treatment.
Right.
And we were told that we had to stay for a longer time. A few months into it, COVID hit.
Oh.
And we were all stuck there, right?
Right.
We ended up staying for a year, went back, and then again back there for another year. But during the first time, COVID-1, when we were there for 1 year.
Right.
And I wanted to do something, something different. So I started, reading about different subjects. A friend of mine, which is the CEO of KIB, called me up and said, "Where are you now?" I said, "I'm in Boston, and my son is being treated here." And he said, "How long will you be there?" I said, "Maybe, I don't know, but maybe at least until September or."
Right.
This was in early 2020, and he said, "I'm looking for a chief strategy officer.
Okay.
Are you interested?" So at the time, I had left my private equity job, and I took sabbatical, so to speak, to take care of my son medical trip.
Right.
And I said, let me think about it. It's been some time since I left banking, but let me ask you a few questions. And I told him, just straight off the bat, can you name your top 3 priorities? And number 1 was digital transformation. I told him, okay, let me read up about that, and then and then let's have another chat in a few weeks. And then I started reading everything I could, find about digital banking and digital transformation. It was, quite an enticing domain. It's new, so
Right.
it levels the playing field for me and other bankers, veterans of banking,
Okay.
because we're all doing something that no one has done before. And so I said, yeah, sure. I'll take a stab at that. I picked up the phone, called a few banker friends, and I started to play dumb. I was telling them, what's your top 3 priorities? And everyone had digital banking in them, digital transformations in them. And then I was like, I left banking a long time ago. What's digital banking?
Interesting.
And no one actually gave me a straight answer. No one.
Right.
That was very enticing. That was very enticing, because this means that the field has playing field has really been leveled. So that gives me an edge, because I read a lot, educate myself. I'm a lifelong student, so I've read every single thing I could find about the subject. And when I came back to Kuwait in September, my friend was like, "Are you ready to join?" I said, "Yeah, sure." And I joined in October 2020. It's been 5 years now, ever since I've been Chief Strategy Officer, and it's been a great learning journey so far.
Interesting. And what's one thing you're working on right now that excites you the most? I think I know the answer, but I would want to hear it from you.
Absolutely, yes. When you are, being a professional banker or a strategist is a domain, right? But what really gets me going, what really gives me fire in my belly is the entrepreneurial side to me.
Right.
So currently, my latest creation is an agentic AI process engineering platform called ESAM.ai.
Okay.
You can see it at www.esam.ai. And the story behind that is actually rather very interesting.
Right.
As part of my strategy team, I have a change management team, which is tasked with continuous process improvement. So basically, we apply both a reactive and a proactive approach. We get calls on a weekly basis from someone in some department complaining about some process that's just being cumbersome and taking unduly long time.
Right.
And sometimes we actually identify key processes and we analyze them. And so when we identify a key process to baseline, basically we draw out the current process, we analyze it, and then we optimize it with a new process design. On average, this takes a Lean Six Sigma black belt process engineer a few days, if you want to do it really, really 100% correct. And I wanted to hire more because recently we rolled out the new strategy, and the new strategy actually focuses on deepening our clients' relationships. And to do that, you really need to perfect your business processes to deliver better value to your customers.
Of course.
Customers won't wait, much longer. It's a thing of the past that people will stay on hold or wait for a few hours, or not even hours, minutes, to get their swift confirmation, for example.
Agreed.
This is
They
a thing of
always
the
want it
past.
yesterday.
Exactly. I needed to grow the team, so I went out looking to hire more process experts, but that proved very difficult because this kind of talent is very rare,
Right.
especially in Kuwait. And so I said, okay, let me try to boost their output by acquiring some sort of a solution an enterprise solution that would help us speed up our process improvement cycle.
Right.
And I've seen a few solutions. These are, Fortune 500 solutions, really good stuff. But they hardly met half of my requirements. Plus, it costs an arm and a leg to acquire it, and then maybe, a few tens of thousands of dollars for annual licensing and maintenance.
Right.
And I said, I don't mind paying if it gives me the value. That's absolutely fine. But I'm not going to pay that kind of money for something that doesn't deliver what I'm looking for. And so I said, you know what? Let me go out there and build it myself.
Interesting.
And this was about a year ago. And so I assembled an AI squad on the side beyond the bank, beyond KIB. This is a personal endeavor.
Right.
I started, creating my first MVP. And then we, brought it back for testing. And then, we got more people using it. Now we have the 14th edition. We're way past alpha and beta versions.
Interesting.
And now it's mainstream. And we've added so many features to it. And, we've iterated with different LLM modules to see which one gives us the best output. And the result is astonishing. Now, a non-process expert colleague in any department can actually use ESSAM, the AI process engineer that we've created, to baseline, analyze, and optimize a business process in minutes.
Interesting.
Like a process that used to take a few hours, let's say 3 to 4 hours to baseline, analyze, and optimize, would take 10 minutes.
Interesting.
The beauty of this is that it really allows us to bring process improvement at scale to any enterprise. I no longer need to, only take this very technical domain to my process engineers and my process experts and my Lean Six Sigma black belts to perform these tasks. What we do now is that we have change ambassadors in different departments.
Right.
And all of these have access to the tool, right? And whenever any of them comes across a pain point, an operational, a cumbersome process, they pop up their laptops and start chatting with ESAM to baseline, map out the current process. ESAM will immediately analyze it for you, and you just go, okay, go ahead and clean it up for me. It will produce the new process. And it would also provide a PowerPoint presentation summing up all of this nice work. And all they would need to do is send over that PowerPoint to the process improvement change management team. They will add it to our backlog. Most of the time, we don't need to perform a lot of work. Like I would say 85% of the output is ready to implement, right? But the fact that we actually have a team of process experts, they would they would tweak it a little bit and get that extra oomph out of it.
Right.
Maybe another 5%, another 10% optimization, which speaks to people are scared about AI and the fact that it's going to replace people. I don't think so. A person using AI smartly would replace someone who's not using AI.
That is so true.
But people will remain. Plus, we're still living in an era where we humans need to check the output of the AI, and people think of it as artificial intelligence. But what AI really is, and it's a probability engine. The way it produces the tokens, whenever you send a prompt, ask a question, you see it, typing and hashing out the answer by 1 or 2 words at a time, right? These are called tokens, right? These are produced based on the probability of this word coming after a certain word. So it's not really, that's why it's artificial, It's a probability engine and it's producing the answers for you. So I would say you would always need people to actually read it before we publish it.
For the viewers out there, I have seen the demo. ESAM is really smart. I'm actually going to get my hands dirty with it, and I think you should try it too.
Absolutely.
Have you had any challenges during this process, like building ESAM and taking it to market?
Yeah, for sure. This is all new to people.
Agreed.
And one challenge is actually, this is beautiful because, other than process, there is also the people side of change. And to handle the people side of change, which is more relevant to this discussion, there are 2 main frameworks that you can use. It's either the ADKAR model or the Kotter model. I like to use the ADKAR model and for people change. And in this case, ADKAR, by the way, stands for A, stands for the awareness for the need to change. D, desire for the need to change. K, having the knowledge to perform the change. A, having the ability, which also includes your time, by the way.
Agreed.
To perform the change, and are having some sort of reinforcement and motivation to be part of the change in a continuous fashion. And so the first hurdle is actually not convincing, but creating the awareness with people that you need to optimize your business processes to have a better chance at delivering better value, more value to your customers to be more successful financially and otherwise. And
Right.
so this is the very first. And by the way, in most organizations, large enterprises or mid-sized enterprises, most actually think that their process is fine, right?
Right.
But the truth of the matter is, we conducted a very nice study to try to put a price tag on the problem of inefficiency worldwide, globally. And it's slightly north of $3 trillion,
Wow.
which, by the way, sums up to 20 to 30% of lost revenue. That's how much cumbersome, inefficient, wasteful processes are costing institutions on average. And that's why you see there's a very, very big gap between those who actively optimize their processes and identify wasteful activities within their streams and clean them out, and those who don't do that continuously. Because some people would, call in a process expert, have them there for a quarter or two, clean up a few processes, and then they leave.
True.
They live with the new process design for a year or two, and then they think to themselves, maybe we're due for another round of cleanup. If you do that, you have no chance at meeting the performance of other institutions who perform process improvement continuously.
Agreed.
And this is more relevant during times when you're actually implementing large scale change, like a big transformation or implementing a challenging strategy. So you really need to look into that in a continuous fashion.
I think it's also very important because what happens at large organizations or even SMEs is at times that they're doing the daily firefighting a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And then they don't have the time to look into the processes and improve them because every day there is a new challenge. And when the teams are shorter, and anyways, I mean, companies are moving towards those leaner organizations. So I think it becomes a bit of a challenge to look at the processes again and again and again. And I think having a companion like ESAM would really help, which you can actually, resort to every few days maybe and ask like, okay, I'm working on this right now and this is the trouble. And do you think I need to improve anything? And I've seen it in action. It's amazing. It actually gives you the whole journey, what needs to happen.
People think of process improvement as a very technical process engineering domain, but the truth of the matter is that I think everyone should know how this is performed. And my initial idea was to democratize this domain and allow more people to perform it, whether you know anything about lean practice, lean thinking, Six Sigma, TQM, process engineering, first process design, whether you know any of this or not, right? The beauty of the tool is that putting it in the hands of team members, whether they're process experts or not, really brings process improvement at scale to your organization. And it changes the mindset. In many organizations, people think of procedures, a process is derived usually from a written procedure or an SOP, right? In most organizations. And most people, when you ask them, why do you still do that? This seems very wasteful. I don't think anyone is benefiting from that particular step you're doing. And 99% of the time, people will tell you, that's how we've always done it.
That is so true. And you just took me back to the total quality management class at the business school.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you for refreshing those concepts for me.
Exactly. One thing that provides a lot of guidance in performing this, I actually designed the tool, ESAM, to perform reverse prompt. So you won't be asking it, it will be asking you.
Oh, that's
So
nice.
once you log in, the first thing you see in the screen, hey, what process are we fixing today?
Interesting.
And you'd go the process of podcast production, for example.
Right.
Great, wonderful. Who's the customer that's waiting to receive the output of this process? It's our viewers. Great, wonderful. Or Instagram or social media viewers.
Right.
Who's the main stakeholders in it? Well, it's the host, the guest, the crew, right? And then it starts asking you, question after question. You just answer, and you can dictate or type.
Right.
And it will show you the process forming one step at a time and ask for your confirmation, which is similar to an agile software development. we apply something called pair programming,
Right.
where you have someone who is writing the code, so they write a paragraph or so, and then someone else who comes in to check it there and then.
Okay.
Okay, looks good. Let's move on, right? So we apply that kind of approach with process baselining with you. So you see it one step at a time. When it's done, a few minutes later, it will show you your current process and the current process stats, and it will tell you click here to download the ESAM table, which is the analysis of your current process. ESAM, by the way, is a hybrid process analysis framework which I created.
Right.
In Six Sigma, there are two main frameworks that we use to analyze processes. One is called ESSA and one is called SIMCA.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
And I always thought that each one of them is missing something. So I went out and I took whatever I liked from each,
Okay.
and I've synthesized ESAM. ESAM stands for eliminate, simplify, standardize, automate, or migrate any of the wasteful activities you will identify out of your business process. It will identify the wasteful activities and recommend to you that this should be eliminated, simplified, standardized, automated, or moved elsewhere, migrated. And all you need to do then, if you like all of that, you just go ahead and tell it, okay, sounds good, go ahead and fix it for me. A few seconds later, you'll get the new process design along with a PowerPoint presentation that includes your SOPs, your before and after comparison, right? And you just take it and go for implementation.
Interesting. Well, I can't wait to improve the process that we
Inshallah.
follow for the podcast production. Right. So, I mean, I look at your LinkedIn and you're a chief strategy officer at a leading bank. You are an entrepreneur. You built ESAM from scratch. You're a family man. And then I met you at a panel discussion, and then I've had the honor of listening to your keynote very recently. How do you do all that? So, if we were to zoom into a day in your life, what does it look like? How does it start and how does it end? And how do you manage all this?
I wake up early in the morning for Salat.
Right.
Then I have about half an hour for maybe reading or doing morning stretching or what have you. Then I go to the gym.
Okay.
I try to go there as much as I can.
Right.
And then I'm at work early in the morning. And I leave at 3:15 sharp because I cherish having lunch with my family at 3:45. Usually on my way home, my wife will be calling and she'll be like, "Yalla, the kids are hungry." And so that's where we, catch up and socialize mostly. And
Right.
sometimes she calls me and then I don't answer because I'm busy. And then she asks my daughter to call. So I always answer.
I get that a lot too.
Yeah. So, and then after that, I have quite a bit of time between after lunch. The kids go for their, activities and whatnot.
Right.
And I usually have a good chunk of about 3 good hours
Nice.
where I can do a lot of work during that. At night, I'm a social person, so I usually go to Duaniya, Majlis for those in Imarat.
Right.
And then I don't sleep early. I usually go to bed maybe at 10:30 or 11 o'clock at night. Do last bit reading before I go to sleep.
Interesting.
But most of this actually happens in this 3 hours, 2 to 3 hours after work.
Right.
And it's amazing, how much work you can do if you're focused 100% with no distractions for 2 to 3 hours every day. What you need to have in place is perseverance,
Of
persistence.
course.
2 hours, 3 hours every day, focused work on to create something would do wonders.
How do you stay focused? Because for a lot of us out there who are trying to do multiple things, we lose track of things, right? And how do you stay focused?
Trade-offs. I'm very deliberate about making very clear, deliberate trade-offs.
Okay.
I want to do much more than what I'm doing. As a matter of fact, 2 years ago, I actually put together a new method for strategy development, implementation, and review.
Okay.
At the time, I wanted to create a repository of all of my strategy knowledge to share with my colleagues and anyone who wanted to learn.
Right.
And bit by bit, I discovered that I'm writing a very big book and creating a 200 slide deck. And in it, there were about 40 plus tools and frameworks that I apply over 12 processes, which I've sequenced one after the other. And so I went out there and I created an AI-powered platform for strategy development. As I was building that, I realized that process improvement, you usually create a strategy once for every 3 to 5 years, right?
Right.
But then you're implementing it every day, and every day you're facing, operational pain points and obstacles and wasteful activities within your day, which you would ideally like to, move out of your way. I figured, this is more important than that actually, because people will be using this not on a daily basis, but at least on a weekly basis, right? And instead of using it once every 3 years or 5 years. So let me focus on that. So I deliberately parked that on the side, and I focus 100% just on creating ESSAM.
I think this is something at least I need to learn. I'm not sure about the viewers. I think you can put that in comments, but I need to learn that because there is so much that I want to do. And then while multitasking, there are days or times when I feel like, okay, I didn't accomplish anything because I was focused on too many things. So I think learning how to say no and parking stuff on the side, I think is really important. And thank you very much for mentioning that.
Of course. And lean thinking, they have another word for multitasking, and it's actually a negative connotation. It's called task switching.
Oh, I like it.
Yeah, we think of multitasking as a very useful tool, but the reciprocal of that is task switching. You're effectively switching tasks. And think of it this way: you're so wired in writing, hashing out code, or you're writing a very important email or doing something, and you really focus, right? The very first few minutes while you're doing that, you're building your cadence, but then you really start hashing out code, like a few minutes into it, and then the bell rings or the phone rings or you get a ping or and then you need to and then your attention is
Diverted,
derailed,
yeah.
to something else. You attend to that, then you come back to continue. You're for sure not at your peak. You need another few minutes to come back to that cadence. That is called task switching, and it's actually a negative connotation. And studies show that you usually use 20 to 40% of your effectiveness when you switch tasks.
Interesting. Well, a note to self, that's for me. And of course, viewers, if you want to pick that up, stop task switching. What if you were teaching a crash course to your younger self, probably from 15, 20 years ago? What's the chapter that you're teaching today?
Strategy.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I love it. As a domain within business, strategy is actually the youngest domain within business.
Right.
And when you take a look at the different domains we have in business, you see that accounting and finance, came from mathematicians. MIS came from computer engineers. Marketing came from psychologists, right? Operations management came from industrial engineers. So each concentration or major in business came from somewhere else, right?
Agreed.
Strategy actually came from the military. That's why a lot of the lingo that we use in strategy is actually comes straight from the military.
That is correct. Yeah, agreed.
And so and till this day, I've yet to come across a comprehensive methodology that would tell me how to start developing the strategy, what's questions, and then sequence it and provide a sequenced steps to follow, right? And specify very specific tools and frameworks to apply in each and every step of the way. I've never seen that. I've had my share of readings and education on strategy, and that's why I went out and I created them myself. So yeah, and there's a very, very difference in excellence and performance when you compare companies who actually do this and those who don't.
So I'm going to switch gears a little here because it's a marketing podcast at the end of the day. And I mean, on the outside, you're this accomplished strategy guy, but I can see a little marketer inside you as well because you built something and you're marketing it yourself. And interesting fact is that when you go to ESAM website,
You will
meet Abdullah. I have a rapid fire round, right? And you have built something and you're marketing it too. So, what do you focus most on, SEO or paid advertising?
Paid.
Brand building or performance marketing?
Brand.
Interesting. Creativity or data?
Data.
That gives the basis for everything.
I'll give you a story about that later.
Right. Books or podcasts?
Books.
LinkedIn or Instagram?
For business, of course, LinkedIn.
AI or human intuition?
Humans using AI.
Especially for ESAM, global campaigns or local activations?
I'll start local.
TV ads or TikTok reels?
For sure, TikTok.
I think that's the way to go
For sure.
these days.
Yeah.
Risk taking or playing it safe?
Absolutely risk taking.
Customer first or product first?
Customer.
Some personal questions. I think I may be knowing answers to a few, but let's see if I'm correct. So, coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Early mornings or late nights?
Very early morning.
Mountains or beaches?
Beach.
Reading or web series?
Reading.
Are you a minimalist or a collector?
Minimalist.
City life or countryside?
Country.
Since you're doing marketing campaigns for ESAM as well, so what if your life was a marketing campaign? What would the tagline be?
Optimize your time to create the most value.
Interesting. Spoken like a true strategist.
Thank you.
And what's the best piece of advice you've ever received in your career or life?
This comes from my dad.
Right?
اترك أثرا طيبا in Arabic.
Okay.
Which translates to when you leave, and you will, wherever you are, make sure that people remember you in a good way.
Wow, that's very powerful. What if you had to describe your journey in 3 words, 3 short words? So, what 3 words would describe your life?
3 words:
Yes.
trial and error.
Interesting.
You never get it right the first time, you know?
That is so
There's
true.
always trial and error in everything you do. So
Exactly.
be patient, you know, have the perseverance to run through it.
Usually, I ask the question, what if marketing as we know it disappears tomorrow? But since you're a strategist, I would ask you, what if strategy as a field disappears tomorrow? What's one thing that you would, wear your superhero gown or cape and go out, fight, and bring it back?
Strategy won't be complete without, and this speaks to leadership, by the way, first and foremost, without knowing how to set objectives, missions. I cannot craft a strategy if you do not tell me what mission are we out to accomplish.
That is so true.
And this is the first thing you need from leaders, being able to set objectives. And from there, you get your strategists to, create your plans, mobilize the troops, and then, lead everyone in the right direction.
Interesting. Tomorrow, what if you could put one billboard on Sheikh Zayed Road about yourself? What message you would write on it?
Try ESSAM now and optimize and transform your business one process at a time.
Well, you heard the man. Do that. Go to Google Chrome or whatever browser you're using. Type ESAM.ai, and it will work magic for you. When the credits roll on your professional life, what would you like the lines to read?
I wish I would have done more.
Well, you're already doing a lot. I mean, I see you. I follow you on LinkedIn. This is the 4th or 5th time I think we're meeting in the last couple of months.
Yeah.
And I think you're doing great stuff.
Thank you.
One thing we're missing here is you were about to mention something. I think you were supposed to tell us a story.
You're right.
Because this brings us to the end of the podcast, but I wouldn't want to close it without hearing that story.
It's a hardcore marketing story.
Oh, interesting.
Right?
Okay,
Yes.
I'm all ears.
Nice. So when I was in the US, COVID-1, I wanted to keep myself busy. So I created a brand, an online business, an e-commerce
Okay.
business that sells tactical fabrics for men to wear kandora.
Interesting.
Right? And at the time, I had a very specific product that is designed for people to put on top of their kandora before when they're going out to the desert, so they
Okay.
keep it clean. And it was very versatile and functional and everything. And at the time, I discovered that everything wasn't a problem. Designing the product, testing the product, finding the customers, identifying the segment. All of the marketing stuff that we do at the beginning was all a lot of fun. right?
Right.
The biggest challenge was that this is an e-commerce business, and now I want people to come to the website and start buying, but no one was coming, right? So
Right.
I figured, let me use some influencers, and that didn't work. Let me use some SEO, that didn't work, you know? And then I got into the media buying.
Right.
And oh my God, I fell in love with it. I did the blueprint
Okay.
from
Meta.
Facebook, at this
Yeah.
Meta now, of course. And I started running campaigns myself. There's a very good podcast by Next Level Facebook Ads.
Okay.
At the time, they were already at their 170 podcast.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was a weekly podcast, by the way.
Okay.
I listened to all of them,
Wow.
all
Okay.
170.
That's consistency.
Exactly. In a quest to really learn. I did a few courses online. I found an ex-Facebook guy who's a professional media buyer, and he started also, training me one-on-one weekly calls and whatnot. And then I discovered that, you have to follow the data, right? Not your instinct in this, right?
100%.
And so this one time, of course, you need to feed your campaign with a lot of campaign assets,
Agreed.
videos, and so I actually had a team in Saudi Arabia, mashallah, big crew, cameras, drones, and everything. They took it. They went out in the desert in Al-Ula, a very nice place, right?
Right.
And they did a very nice, cinematic quality video, which I loved so much, right?
Right.
And I put it there, and I said, "This will sell." And it went out. So in media buying, the first thing I check is my CTR all to make sure that we're actually able to attract people to just stop and take a look at it,
Right.
and then the click-through rate. And so if you break 1%, 2%, then you're doing okay, you're fine. And went out there, and I spent a lot of money on this,
Right.
and CTR all was like 0.2%, right?
Right.
And I was like, no, that can't be right. I'm gonna, you know what? Let's run it for one more week. Maybe it'll go up.
Right.
And it didn't. It went down a little bit more, right? And then I realized that I can't, push to market what the market doesn't want, right? The data is telling me that use something else. You like this so much, that doesn't mean that the market is gonna like it.
That is so true.
Put it aside, share it with your friends and family, enjoy it with them like that. And believe it or not, at the time, they had actually given me about 40 free shots.
Okay.
They were out in the desert, already. So they took about 40 free shots. I took those 40 free shots, did some A/B testing on them, and 3 or 4 of them actually did the magic, and we sold out because, thanks to a few free shots that we got, and the one that actually I paid a lot of money for didn't sell at all. So data or instinct? No, when it comes to media buying, you follow the data.
100%. I couldn't agree more. And I have so many examples because I've been in this field for over 15 years now.
MashaAllah.
And there are many times when your peers or your bosses or the management is telling you that, this would work. Okay, the decisions you're making in the boardrooms, they might not be the correct ones.
Absolutely.
So you need to go test, and learn from it and then build upon it.
Absolutely. Let the
right?
market
So-
speak.
Exactly. So at times UGC works, at times influencers work, at times cinematic videos work, at times nothing works. And just a piece of text that you put, it works. right?
Absolutely.
So, well, thank you for sharing this beautiful story. And I think we just had a masterclass on strategy anyways. Please go out, check ESAM, get your hands dirty. I'm sure it is going to optimize a lot of processes in your life. I'm going to do that. You should do that too. What I've started asking my guests is, there is a saying we have internally that whatever happens behind marketing lines stays behind marketing lines, right? So any funny story that you had in your career related to marketing, you must have worked with so many marketers out there. So something that you would want to share, something that we, the marketers, can learn from.
Oh yes, this was during a time when media buying wasn't, was just coming up, and many people were just understanding it. Prior to that time, influencer marketing in this region, at least, was a big hit.
Right.
Then there came a time where organic reach was taking a nosedive, right? And organic reach, just for people who not familiar with the term, is, say I'm a mega account, I have 1 million followers on Instagram, and I post a post or a reel, and I have 1 million followers, and say I reach of them 400,000 of them, right, in a day. This is the organic reach. I'm able to reach that many people in one day. There was a time where organic reach was 40-50%, no problem, and that's why the influencers were giving us really, really good results, right? Then, not due to a fault of their own, no, the algorithms got more complicated, and mega accounts were hardly getting 2-3% organic reach.
Agreed.
And so during that time, I wanted to test, how good this is compared to compared to influencer marketing. So I went to one of the pro agencies, very big name in the GCC, very big name in town. It's owned and managed by a friend of mine.
Right.
I told them, put me through with one of your good account managers. And they told me, okay, what we can do is this. We can promise you cost per click, traffic going to your website of at the time they said, I remember about $2 per click. So they were asking $8,000 for 4,000 clicks, something like that.
Right.
And I said, okay, sure, that's not a big price. That's all right. But let me test it out myself.
Right.
With zero media buying knowledge at the time, right?
Interesting.
I haven't done anything yet.
Right.
I just, took one of my best posts, and promoted that. And a few days later, I got the 2,000 clicks that I wanted or so, and the cost was 9 cents on the dollar. So I was almost gonna pay 20 times over that price, But in many cases, when you compare, old versus new, if you haven't made that leap yet, by reading, by trying things out, by trial and error, like I said earlier, you'd fall for that. And they weren't necessarily scamming me or anything. No, it's not like that. It's just that was the going rate at the time, But things were changing, so much that the prices were falling that fast. Worked well for me at the time, but worked very bad for them, unfortunately.
That's interesting. And I told you, deep inside, he is a marketer. So I think whenever he's in town, next time we won't have a session on strategy, but we'll have a session on marketing.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you very much. We learned a lot. It was
you.
very insightful. It was a pleasure having you behind Marketing Lines. And
Thank you.
hopefully we'll see you in another episode.
Inshallah. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. And thank you for tuning in to Behind Marketing Lines. Well, this was the story of Abdulla Al-Awadi and strategy and ESSAM. I'll see you in the next episode.